Hello, today's movie is The White Tiger. As the movie opens, an entrepreneur named Ballroom Hallway emails Chinese premier Wen Jiabao to request a meeting and to share his life story. He also describes the situation in his country, and expresses his belief that the underclass in India is trapped in a perpetual state of servitude, like the slaves of the British Empire. Ballroom is the only student at his school who can read and speak English, which is why he is referred to as the White Tiger at his school. In his essay, he describes himself as a native of a small village in India, where he attended a small school, where no one knew how to write or speak English. We learn that Ballroom resides with his father and elderly grandmother, and that his grandmother manages the family's finances. Ballroom has always been a gifted student, and his teachers are well aware of his potential. One day, his teacher tells him there's a chance he might be chosen for a prestigious Delhi school, and he might get a scholarship to help him finish his education. However, when his father is unable to pay off the village landlord, Ballroom is forced by his grandmother to work in the tea shop in the village, and he never goes back to school. When he learns that his father has tuberculosis, there are no doctors nearby who can treat him, and as a result, his father passes away from TB in a hospital. Currently, Ballroom just has his job in the tea stand, where he works in his life. However, one day, Ashik, the stork's son, arrives from the village. Ashik is the son of the very landlord. They are obligated to pay him back. Ballroom wants to work as a chauffeur for Ashik, who has just returned from the United States with his wife Pinky, who was raised in Jackson Heights. Ballroom convinces his grandmother to pay for his driving lessons with the promise of splitting his chauffeur's wages. The grandmother accepts since she likes the idea of Ballroom becoming more financially independent. Ballroom continues to pursue his goal of being a competent driver by learning to drive. He visits the landlord's residence after becoming a driver and informs him that he wants to be Ashik's chauffeur. Ballroom is employed as the second driver for the historic family, but he is also given menial jobs to fulfill and is mistreated. He is forced to perform numerous tasks, including cleaning the house, massaging the landlord and his son, and giving them food. He must complete all of these tasks. As Ballroom's sad routine continues at the landlord's house, we notice Pinky, the landlord's daughter-in-law. Pinky is a doctor by profession. She and Ashik fell in love. Ballroom was a driver, thus he had no respect in the family and they treated him extremely poorly and severely. They were having problems with Delhi's politicians when they were in America before getting married, so they decide to travel there. Ashik truly intends to bribe Indian politicians in order to exempt his family from paying taxes. After the family's primary driver is fired, because of the family's conventional prejudice against Muslims, Ballroom wants to drive for them in Delhi, revealing the fact that the family's primary driver is a Muslim. When Ballroom visits Delhi, he learns how much he has been missing out on, and that there are many things about himself that he has to alter. One day, while Ballroom is serving a guest tea, he begins to scratch himself, and Pinky gives him a piece of her mind for being so filthy. Ballroom decides that he needs to start keeping himself tidy and clean, so he immediately goes to the store to buy toothbrushes, toothpaste, and new clothes for himself. He is irate because no one ever told him that it is bad manners to scratch oneself in front of someone else. He realizes that eating so many pans is bad and that he has been a fool and a gross person all this time. He tries his hardest to brush his teeth, but the stains left behind by the pans on his teeth do not disappear. He now desperately wants to move on from his past, but because he is connected to it in every aspect of his life, and it will not be that simple to do. He wants to change his life immediately, but he is unable to do so. In contrast to the other family members, Asha, Pinky treats Ballroom with respect and grows closer to him despite the fact that they still see him as a servant. Everything is going as planned in Delhi until Pinky's birthday. When Pinky and Ashik go out to celebrate Pinky's birthday, Ashik surprises her. They both get very intoxicated, and when they get in the car, Ballroom drives. However, as they get moving, Pinky becomes adamant that she will drive. Ballroom is forced to leave, and Pinky, who was quite inebriated, ends up killing a child while driving. They are all terrified and worried at the prospect of going to jail, because they have no other option. Ashik contacts his father, and describes the entire situation to him. They speak, and the next thing we notice is that everyone begins to treat Balram with great kindness. Balram is forced by the Stork family to sign a confession that is supported by his grandmother. They also force him to sign some papers that state unequivocally that Balram is to blame for the incident, and that he ran over the child. One of the landlord's men claims to have visited Balram's grandmother and threatens to kill her if he refuses to sign the papers. Balram is deeply affected by this moment because he begins to realize that he feels like he is trapped in a cage and that he wants to escape that cage. Ashik tries to defend Balram by saying that it is wrong to blame everything on the innocent, but he backs down due to his lack of control over his tyrannical father. The good news is that over time he begins to understand that he is the one who holds the key to that cage, so if he remains steadfast and determined, he will be able to escape. Alternatively, it's possible that the cage is already open, because he is unwilling to leave, because he has come to the realization that ordinary people like him have no life, no significance, and no importance. They continue by telling Balram that he will not go to jail, because the crime was not initially reported to the police, explaining that the reason the child who died in Pinky's car crash is not even being investigated is because the child came from a poor family. If he had been born into a wealthy family, the police would have been all over them. Pinky is the only member of the Stork family who cares about Balram, and she is upset with the landlord's treatment of him when Balram approaches the landlord to touch his feet after hearing the good news. Of course, the landlord kicks Balram away because Balram has completed his task, and since the crime was not reported, they are no longer required to be nice to him. Before she departs, she gives some money to Balram and tries to convince him that he is the only one who can free himself from the cage he is currently in, realizing that these people do not even consider their servants to be human because they do not even treat them with the basic respect that any human being deserves. She also instructs him to take care of Ashok during her absence. When Balram informs Ashik of Pinky's departure, Ashik begins to slap him, and Balram pushes him to the ground out of frustration. When Pinky is absent, Balram makes every effort to take care of Ashik. Ashik becomes intoxicated, and Balram makes every effort to nurse him back to health. The two begin to bond, but when everyone is present, Balram is treated as a servant, as he has always been. However, over time, Balram comes to the realization that no matter how much he looks after Ashik, he will always be a servant to this family. Balram also realizes that his loyalty to Ashik was no guarantee of a comfortable life once his services were no longer required. Balram then begins to believe that he must make a decision for himself. Balram tries to come up with a plan, but nothing noteworthy or significant comes to mind. Meanwhile, Ashik and his brothers begin to discuss hiring another driver. Balram learns of this, and now he is even keener to come up with something that would improve his life. For days, he has been considering what he should do. Balram starts to use fake invoices to scam Ashik while also earning extra cash by selling the car's fuel and operating the vehicle as an unregistered taxi. Balram experiences a string of failures. He enrages the Stork family by giving money to a beggar, and suddenly, his grandmother sends one of his younger nephews to live with him so that he may learn how to drive. The manager of Balram shouts at the beggar when he gives him some money one day, telling him that it is not his. Later, the beggar received a note from his grandma. His grandmother's announcement that he must marry the girl of her choice is just another indication that he has no control over his life, which Balram finds upsetting, because he has been trying to figure out a way to take control of his own life and not let the others control it. He continues to read the letter and discovers that she has found a girl for him, and he is going to marry her. Anytime Balram has an idea, he smashes a bottle and stashes it inside the car. He then notices that Ashik always has a lot of money on him, since he frequently visits politicians to bribe them in order to acquire what he wants. Balram envisions killing Ashik, taking the money, and fleeing. Ashik, who has been buying voters to vote against the great socialist in the approaching elections, is now being driven about by Balram on a daily basis. Ashik looks at the money bag, and sees that one bag is equivalent to 4 years' worth of his wage, or at least one day. When Ashik is getting ready to pay an especially big bride, Balram gets his opportunity. He has an insight into how to escape his role as the white tiger, so he drives Ashik, pretending there is a problem with the wheel, and that he needs to stop. After persuading Ashik to help him, he repeatedly stabs him with a bottle, before slitting his throat to kill him. He then gets back inside the car, screams, laughs, and finally smiles when he sees the bag of money. When Balram has his own business, and is the boss of many people, he goes to the train station to flee, but returns for his nephew. He then immediately travels to Bangalore, where Balram uses the skills he learned from Ashik to find a way into the industry. He starts a taxi service called White Tiger. He makes an effort to ensure that he would be a better employer than his own old boss, the landlord, who used to treat him like a slave. As a result, he is always kind to those who work for him, respects everyone, and never treats them like his employees. Balram travels to Bangalore with his nephew, and afterward, there is a bubble for major IT businesses. He pays the police with some of the stolen money in order to disqualify taxi companies for operating without permits. Balram creates his own taxi business and becomes wealthy as a result. He treats his drivers as employees rather than as servants, and accepts responsibility for any problems they cause, including hiring the sister of a kid who was murdered in a company driver-related accident. While admitting that his remaining family back home may have been murdered by the Stork's men in retaliation, pleased to be free from servitude, he funds his nephew's schooling. Balram says that he changed his name to Ashik Sharma after the film's conclusion. Thank you for watching. To receive notifications of new movies, please like and subscribe.